everyone. My name is Jess of HTTR.Nation on Instagram, joined by my co-host Sam of WSH Football 365, also on Instagram. Check us out if you aren't already following. We've been gone for a few months, but we are ready to get back in action, back in the swing of things. New name, new content, same co-host. So the new league year has already started, and there's a lot to catch up on, from free agency, departures, re-signings, signings, what Washington has done so far or not done in some cases, and what could still happen. So let's dive into it.
Yep. I think if you'd have told me a couple months ago that we got a starting wide receiver, a starting quarterback, and a really good corner already in free agency before the draft started, I would have done backflips. So pretty happy at where we're at right now and excited to dive into a little bit of analysis of what's been going on.
I think we should start with the re-signings. I mean, there's some big names that Washington brought back, most notably Brandon Sheriff, franchise tag, second year in a row, 1 year for $18 million. I am not a huge fan of that price tag, mainly because it's $3 million over the second highest paid player at that position. Sheriff has been a bit iffy on the injuries the past couple years. I think he's missed 16 out of his past 48 games, which is equivalent to about one season out of the past 3 years. But, I mean, he's an all-pro. What are you thinking about this, Sam?
I can understand your hesitation of signing him to the tag this year, but Michael Phillips of the Richmond Time-Dispatch brought up a good point today. And if they hadn't have tagged him this year, they would have lost him and likely wouldn't have gotten any no compensatory pick back due to how active they were in free agency. So signing him this year to the franchise tag ensures them next season they'll likely get a third round pick back for him if he is to walk in free agency, which is looking more and more like it's what's going to happen. Yeah, I kind of hate to spend 18 million on a guy, but he is all pro. He is an anchor on that line, and he's a good piece of culture in a team that's trying to build one right now. So I think they're in the business of bringing back their captains, and they want to show other players and future players that come to Washington that they're interested in bringing their own people back. So I can definitely understand their mindset.
I guess an alternative thought process to that situation is how much should you really let, let's say, a third round compensatory pick dictate your decision making process? Because right now, I mean, you mentioned it, Sheriff, it's not looking good for a potential long term deal. I don't think there's a lot of traction there. My main issue with the $18 million price tag was both what it does for the market and something Ben Standig mentioned on one of his podcasts is that it gives Sheriff and his agent, his camp, a new negotiating point. Because right now he's guaranteed 1 year for $18 million. Why would he sign for anything less than that if he's already guaranteed to 100% make $18 million in 2021? I mean, it's now kind of looking at like Washington would have to offer maybe 17 and a half million per year for an interior offensive lineman who has struggled to stay healthy. I mean, Sheriff's a great player, and I understand the reasoning of bringing him back. He's top 5, easily top 10 player on the team, key part of the offensive line, but I'm just not seeing the value there.
Yeah, I'm just playing devil's advocate a little bit because I can sympathize with both sides of this. I guess when you got guys like Sadiq Charles in the background, maybe when you have the money like they did this year, they put up the 18 for the experience and for this, just the fact that he knows the line, he knows the offense, the players know him. To them, it might have just been worth the money. Next year, you plug in Sadiq or someone else, for a lot cheaper, and you still get a pick back. So, yeah, it's hard to spend that money, but I can see why. I guess they're doing it.
I think a possible scenario we could see is Sadiq Charles get some work at left guard this year because that's where they played him for his 2 snaps against New York Giants last year, and then flip Schweitzer over to right guard when Sheriff walks in 2022. Or another scenario is we could see them draft somebody, get them in their building a year early, a year in advance, and just start prepping for Sheriff's replacement a year ahead, which is usually a move that the smart teams make. So something to take a look out for during the draft, see if they take some interior offensive linemen.
One of the good things about the entire situation is they aren't exactly handcuffed. So they have a lot of routes they could take, and none of them are necessarily the wrong one yet. So a lot of time to play this, what they're going to do with it.
Some of the other re-signings we saw: Taylor Heineke, the man of the people, 2 years for $8.75 million. He was set to be a restricted free agent, but I think something that's important about that number, I've seen this tossed around a few times where people saying that him making close to $4.5 million per year is indicative of how the team feels about him. I wanted to toss in that $8.75 million number is largely incentive based. It's more so about a 2-year, $4 million contract. So I just don't want people to get too ran or just run with it with how much money the team is actually paying Heineke, because a lot of it is for snaps he probably won't be getting in the regular season.
Yeah, after his performance in the playoffs, they had to bring him back, and I definitely wanted him back. He seems like a guy who's got a lot of gut, got a lot of heart, and that's how the team's trying to move forward right now with that type of attitude. Um, Personally, I think barring any injuries with him, that almost all but solidifies him at QB2 over Kyle Allen. In my, that's just my opinion. Unless they end up drafting somebody. Sure. As I said, there's a lot of things that can happen between then and now. But yeah, all incentive based. I'm not sure how much we'll actually see him on the field this year. Who knows? Maybe we'll go into training camp and he absolutely just crushes Ryan Fitzpatrick or whoever else is in the QB room at that time and wins the job. But overall, I think it was a really good signing to bring him back. The team loves him. You saw how fast players rallied around him, and I think that's something that's good for the team right now. So yeah, Taylor Heineke is definitely a good signing.
I agree it's the right move to bring him back. No real way that they should have let him walk after his performance in the playoff game. But I disagree with your fact about him being quarterback two. I still think that is Kyle Allen. I mean, a lot of people are quick to forget. Not coming at you here, Sam, but I just think a lot of people are quick to forget that Kyle Allen is Ron Rivera and Scott Turner's guy. Like, this is the dude they went out and traded a fifth-round pick for, like 3 months into their regime last year. He was the guy in Carolina that got him as an undrafted free agent, brought him up to a capable NFL backup. They've always loved him. He was the guy that Rivera said the team likely would have clinched a playoff berth with earlier had he not gotten injured. Even though it was about 3.5, 4 games, he did lead the NFL in completion percentage. I mean, they were against Dallas, New York, New York twice, and Dallas, but and the Rams, of course. But don't forget too easily about Kyle Allen. I still think he's got quarterback two locked up for right now.
And not to come at you, Jess, either, but we also need to remember that Taylor Heineke is Scott Turner's guy as well, because he got him undrafted, and when he was in Minnesota, brought him from Minnesota to Carolina, brought him from Carolina to Washington. So you can kind of say the same about both players in that sense. Kyle Allen definitely has more starting experience, more NFL success, but he also lacks that spark plug factor that Taylor Heineke has, and that could change maybe if he stays healthy. That could definitely give him an edge over Kyle Allen. And you got to remember too, Kyle Allen's coming back from a pretty major injury as well. So I think they might be neck and neck. Maybe me saying QB2 is a little premature, but I definitely think that's up for debate.
I will say, counterpoint to your counterpoint, Kyle Allen was the guy they did bring in first before Heineke. Heineke was not in the building until the team needed a quarantine quarterback after the Broncos disaster that was late in November. And Taylor Heineke has also, in every single regular season game he's played in, he has not been able to finish the game from start to finish because of injury. So there's some injury concerns there with Heineke. I mean, shoulder. We saw it in the playoff game. I believe he's had an ankle injury before. So,
Yeah.
I think we can both agree that quarterback two is not 100% locked in. It will likely be Heineke and Allen battling for a spot. But, I mean, you go with Heineke, I go with Allen. I think we can both agree there is some momentum behind each of those cases.
I think we can all agree that this is going to be a fun quarterback room to watch this offseason and training camp. I'm excited actually. Not like a whole lot of like nothing for the future type stuff, but like you got a lot of guys that can play and should push each other. And if they add somebody in the draft, it's going to get even crazier. And the fact that they've been saying that Steven Montez might get some time as like a Taysom Hill type quarterback this year. Whole lot of stuff going on.
I mean, you mentioned the possibility of adding somebody in the draft. I think if that happens, then it's going to be between Allen and Heineke for the odd man out, because Fitzpatrick is a lock to make it. Any rookie they take, I'm assuming, is a lock to make it. then I don't think they're going to carry 4 quarterbacks. So I think it'd then be between Allen and Heineke for either QB2 or 3, with the rookie and Fitzpatrick already being sharpied into their spots.
Yeah, there's an outside chance that we could even see Allen and Heineke off of the roster come week 1. It's a very outside chance, but it could happen.
There weren't a ton of other big re-signings made. I mean, Dustin Hopkins, Cam Sims, Kyle Allen, who we just talked about, a couple other depth guys, and Lamar Miller, David Sharp, Danny Johnson, Jared Norris, all brought back. None too big. I mean, I saw some people were upset with the Hopkins signing, but I know you're very anti-Hopkins. I know you're very anti-Hopkins, but I think for 1 year, $2.5 million, considering the hamstring injury he had, I think they're going to bring in maybe an undrafted free agent, battle out in camp a little bit, but I don't think that's a bad move to bring back a guy who's usually been fairly reliable the past 5 or 6 years.
No, we all know my stance on Hopkins, but it was 100% the right move to make because you look at other teams around the league, they get rid of their kicker, and who's really better out there than the guy that they already have. And despite his shortcomings and struggles, he has been an overall pretty consistent kicker, and he did have that injury last year. So it is the right move to bring him back and at least give him competition in camp.
Some of the guys that left in free agency, aside from Ronald Darby, not too many big losses. I mean, Kevin Pierre-Louis might have been their worst player on defense last year, not named Troy Apke. Robert Foster struggled a bit. Ryan Anderson, Fabian Moreau didn't do too much. I know there are a lot of Moreau fans out there, but aside from Darby leaving, who they're able to replace, obviously, not too many key departures, which is fortunate.
Yeah, that unless Ryan Kerrigan ends up going, and then they really canceled out the Darby departure really quickly, which was something this fan base really needed. So a lot of people were pretty mad about losing Darby, but the grand scheme of things, Darby was playing for a contract and he got it, and I can't really blame him for not paying him. And Ron's always been good at developing guys. William Jackson is going to be a great replacement for that.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about Darby leaving. He quickly went from somewhat underrated by the fan base to a little overrated in terms of how much of an impact he actually made.
Yeah.
Obviously, he has some injury concerns over his career so far. So I think the price tag I was looking at in those days leading up to free agency, I was hoping they could try and find something around $8 million kind of cap per year. Ended up signing for 3 years, $30 million to head out west to Denver. So I'm kind of glad they didn't pay that contract. Obviously, Ronald was a good dude here, good player, really shined in his 1 year in the nation's capital, but I'm okay with letting him walk for that kind of money.
Jumping ahead to our own free agent signings, William Jackson was a great one, under the radar. Didn't get a whole lot of talk about it, if any at all. I personally didn't hear any rumblings from any of my sources about them being interested in William Jackson. And it seemed to get him on a really good deal. You look at his numbers, he was pretty quiet out there in Cincinnati, and one of the smallest market teams in the NFL. Didn't hear a whole lot about him. He's on a bad team most of the time. But this guy has the potential of being a CB1, to be 100% honest with you. He might even be better than Kendall Fuller in a lot of areas. We love Kendall, no discredit to him. But William Jackson has the makings of potentially being a true shutdown cornerback. And I think he's going to totally thrive in this defense with Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera. I think this has become a low-key, popular destination for defensive players. And this is honestly one of those. We're seeing that with the signing of William Jackson because I'm sure he had plenty of teams that wanted him. And great under the radar top free agent signing. I'm really excited about this one.
I think William Jackson is better than Kendall Fuller. Like you said, nothing against Kendall, but I think William Jackson just has a higher ceiling as an outside cornerback. It's already been noted how great he is in man coverage. Some of the statistics that come to show it. I think he's allowed to catch on 37% of his targets when in man coverage since 2017, which is a very phenomenal number. One of the best man coverage corners in the league. Pretty decent zone coverage. Didn't help that he was playing in Cincinnati. Not to rag on the Bengals too much, but they had the worst pass rush in football last year. I'm assuming their defensive scheme didn't do any favors. So it should be interesting to see how he slides right into the defense, considering he isn't quite a natural fit to Jack Del Rio's usual defense, but I think Del Rio is smart enough and Jackson talented enough that he will make adjustments where needed to get his guys to thrive.
Yeah, and this also allows the defense to scheme around him and to move players around that they weren't able to normally do before, i.e., Kendall Fuller. You have somebody that you can put on the side of the field and pretty much shut down one side of the field. That really opens up things for your defense and just really takes an offense out of the game, keeps them guessing. He's going to be valuable in many more ways than one.
He was probably my favorite free agency signing. I'd say for both the deal and the ceiling of the player you can get. I mean, I know you just mentioned we didn't really hear much about the connections of it coming. It just kind of came out of nowhere. There was neither any national momentum or local momentum of William Jackson to Washington. I think it probably developed a lot right after Darby signed with the Broncos because there was some reports about mutual interests, whether it be from John Keim or Ben Standig, about a Darby reunion with Washington. But as soon as he left, I think it's probably when they said, hey, why don't we just go poach the biggest fish in the cornerback market in free agency? And that they did on the 3-year, $42.5 million deal, which is technically a 2-year deal with a team option at the end of it.
Yeah, I definitely think that's what happened. And I'm glad that it did. I think he's going to do wonders for this defense next year. That's for sure. Moving forward to our next biggest free agent signing, we have wide receiver Curtis Samuel. Now on the team, we have a wide receiver that can play running back and a running back that can play wide receiver. Curtis Samuel's super versatile, kind of reminds me of a Percy Harvin, coming off of 77 receptions last year for 851 and 3 touchdowns, adding 41 rushing attempts for 200 yards, averaging nearly 5 yards per carry. It's going to give Scott Turner a really versatile weapon on offense that he can move around his offensive Swiss Army knife. He's buddies with Terry McLaurin, Ohio State. I believe they might have even been roommates in college. It's just a great add to the team. I think they got him on a really frugal deal as well. Yeah, I love it. The fan base really wanted this guy. Jersey swaps everywhere. Everybody kind of got a little impatient. When's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? Well, it finally did, and they have a legit weapon to take some pressure off of Terry McLaurin. Really excited about this one as well. How do you feel, Jess?
Yeah, so for contract numbers, we're looking at 3 years, $34.5 million, which also has some voidable years in it, all by the team. Not sure if that's like a 1-2 or a 1-1 or a 2-1 type of deal, but pretty good contract structure. I think it comes out to about 11.5 per year, which is pretty good number considering the market and some of the other deals that are getting tossed around. But I think leading up to the Samuel signing, I don't love. I'm a fan of it. I do like it. I'd probably give it a B, but I can't say I love it. And that is that. Okay, so my reasoning here is I think I mentioned it on my account a few times, but I have some concerns about a natural fit into the offense because I mean these concerns have somewhat been addressed by both Samuel and Washington's coaching staff, but in his 3 years in Carolina with Ron Rivera and Norv Turner, who Scott Turner has a loosely based system from. Samuel was one of the most inefficient players in the NFL, was clearly not hitting his ceiling, was in trade talks. He was a bust so far, first 3 years in Carolina, 2017 to 2019. However, once Joe Brady and his new modernized offense came in, Samuel really had a breakout year. That's when the connections to Washington started to dial up. And while Scott Turner's offense isn't it's not quite the same as Nord. It's a lot more modernized. It incorporates a lot more, I guess, different schemes or techniques. There is just some lingering concerns, I guess, considering he's coming back to the same kind of regime that couldn't figure him out, and he didn't flourish until they were gone. So I think there's probably some mutual trust between the two of them, between what Turner was able to see how Joe Brady used Curtis Samuel last year. Curtis Samuel trusts in the staff with getting a second crack at his utilization, but just have to see how it plays out first. It's definitely a talent upgrade over anyone else not named Terry McLaurin, but we'll have to see if he really slides in as well as people say he will.
Yeah, I can definitely see where the concerns are at, due to the first 3 years of his career. But it does take time for players to develop. Players are young. Coming out of Ohio State, the field was wide open all the time. We have offenses spread out. The NFL is a little bit different, and I think he's going to fit in great. I think he's just the type of tool that Turner was looking for last year. They love their jet sweeps, and I think he's just a perfect guy to plug in. Hopefully none of that happens. And I guess with any draft pick or any free agent signing, you're taking a risk. And to go back to the contract, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they have an out after year two, if with a minimal dead cap hit. But I personally think he's going to fit in just fine.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I mean, I'm a fan of the signing. Like I said, it's not a bad move by the team, but there is just some hesitations that I have with it. I'm not as starry-eyed as a lot of the fan base I've seen is about it. I'm hopeful that stuff is going to work out, but yeah, I guess you just have those little bit of reservations in the back of your mind, considering this pairing has been together before and it didn't work out the first time. So I'll just have to be proved wrong a second time by however new concepts or new creative ways they want to use them.
Yeah, I'm not expecting like 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, but 1,000 total yards and 8 touchdowns is something I could see, and I'd be happy with.
I mean, at the end of the day, they just needed more talent on offense, which they were able to get with this signing, take less pressure off number 17, and figure it out from there. So I'm still expecting maybe a draft pick to get made at the position, maybe day two, but definitely a good move to bolster the wide receiver group.
Agree. Totally agree. Next up, we have the beard, the Amish rifle, the man himself, Ryan Fitzmagic, Ryan Fitztragic, whichever one you want to call him. He's had an up and down career. I believe this will be his 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th. We will be his 10th team, I believe. He's had quite a journey around the NFL. 38 years old, Harvard graduate, well loved by everyone, and actually, believe it or not, probably helped attract Curtis Samuel to the Washington football team due to the simple fact that he is known for giving his receivers lots of chances. He's coming off an up and down year last year in Miami. He threw for, let's see here, he was 183 completions out of 267 attempts, 68.5 completion percentage for just over 2,000 yards, 13 touchdowns as he split time with Tua and came in relief situations. Seemed like Washington got the best quarterback still available at the time when they took him, or when they signed him to a contract, rather. He's here for 1 year. I think he serves as the best option at the time. And once Jameis Winston went off the market, I think this was their best bet at winning. If he can minimize his turnovers, you never know. But statistically, in the past 4 to 5 years, he's been a top 10 quarterback. So I guess Rivera and company thinks that Ryan Fitzpatrick gives this team the best chance to win right now. And I kind of believe it. I like to have it. I like his moxie. I like his wiliness. I think he's going to do a lot of good things for this team. And I think we need to buckle in because I think he's going to do a lot of boneheaded things for this team too. But it's going to be fun to watch.
My first reaction when the Adam Schefter tweet notification came across my phone was I was let down. I'm not going to lie. I was disappointed at first with the signing. Like the William Jackson signing, although this one was first, kind of came out of nowhere. No one was really connecting Fitzpatrick to Washington. And I mean, in the months leading up to free agency and the new league year, Washington went hard after Matt Stafford. They were rumored to be gearing up to go after Dak Prescott should he hit the open market. They were possible big trade-up candidates. So a lot of the names that were getting connected to Washington early did not come to fruition, which is in part some of the disappointment. Nothing really against the Fitzpatrick signing. However, I think once the move kind of settled down a bit, he does obviously bring the energy, he brings the enthusiasm, he brings the moxie, like you mentioned, to the sidelines of the team that we're going to love to see at times. Whether he is Fitzmagic or Fitztragic, we shall see. Probably, likely a combination of both if history has shown us anything about his career thus far. I think a good way to look at this signing is pretty much you are trading Ryan Fitzpatrick out for Alex Smith, and you are getting an upgrade in play, and you are getting a decrease in pay, which is a win-win in my book. I can't say it's a great move
Love it.
considering some of the options they had at first, and considering Fitzpatrick is not the cream of the crop of like options they had available this offseason, but they're getting better at quarterback, and it will be an experience. I will say that much. So remains to be seen. I think I'd give this a B, but I am excited to see how Fitzpatrick turns out.
I might be like a little bit too enamored with it just because like I love his whole persona and I love watching him play, but like I think this is going to be a great thing for us. I think who knows what the future is going to hold, but part of me kind of hopes we get him for more than 1 year. Not if he's doing poorly, obviously, but like part of me just wants to see like this like late career resurgence, kind of like a Rich Gannon or a Brad Johnson, to where we have like Fitzmagic for like 3 to 4 years and he just lights it up until he's 41, throws for 30 touchdowns every year and wins a couple Super Bowls. But you know, a man can dream. But yeah, Fitzpatrick, Fitzmagic, Fitztragic, we're here for the ride. I give it a B plus.
I mean, good comparison there with coming on late in his career. I think there is an argument to be had about he has seen some success in the past couple of years. His last 16 games, I'm not sure where this, I saw the stat on Twitter and Instagram, but his last 16 games are about equivalent to the production Washington was getting out of Kirk Cousins. So if that kind of stuff translates, if Washington gets a Kirk Cousins level of play with their current offensive structure and defensive personnel, I think that's a really good bang for your buck on a 1 year kind of 10 million type of deal. Also, the past 3 years, Fitzpatrick has a top since 2018 is a top 15 quarterback rating in the NFL. So, I mean, those could be misleading stats, but we'll just have to see how this joyride goes.
Well, I'm here for it.
So the last somewhat big free agency signing that Washington made, I wouldn't even really say it was big, but it was kind of a savvy, smart move. Was bringing in slot receiver Adam Humphries from Tennessee. He's kind of been a bit disappointing in his 2 years with the Titans, both with injuries and production. But he had a career year in 2018 playing with Ryan Fitzpatrick. So slides
Yeah.
wide receiver. I know it's a 1 year deal. Not sure how much money it is. Probably nothing too crazy. But how you feeling about this?
I like it. Gives the option to the team to still draft somebody because if they do and he's better, then I'm not mad about them signing Humphreys and he can just still be on the team and be a veteran presence. And if not, you have a solid veteran presence who's proven that he can be successful in the NFL. And it's always good to give your quarterback a little bit of familiarity, give him a couple pair of hands that he's very used to throwing to. And I think it's a very a low risk signing that can only be helpful to the team. I can't really see any negative aspect of this. They didn't overpay for him. I think he's going to be just fine. I give this one an A.
Side note, in 2018, Adam Humphries was the punt returner for the Buccaneers. Washington's punt return game was awful last year. Steven Sims Jr., Isaiah Wright, not good. Either one of them, both with muffs, returns, just not reliable. And the special teams coordinator in 2018 for the Buccaneers, when Humphries was a punt returner, was Nate Kaiser, who is currently Washington's special teams coordinator. So a little connection there. They might have at least found a new punt returner.
Yeah, there's no way they can go into next year the same way they did last year in the return game. So versatility, something that the team loves. Great signing. I believe the team is mostly done with their free agent signings until possibly after the draft, but we have a couple here that we could possibly want to keep an eye on for the team that could help fill a few needs, a couple under the radar guys. First guy that I'm going to start with is Darren Fells. He's a tight end. Played the last couple of years in Houston. Before that, he's done time in Cleveland, Detroit, and Arizona. His best year was probably in 2019. He had 7 touchdowns, 34 receptions in Houston. The team definitely needs a second tight end to pair besides Logan Thomas because they have virtually no one after him at the position. There's been talk about possibly converting Gandy Golden or Kelvin Harmon, but like John Kimes said, that is purely speculation at this point. Darren Fells is recently released by Houston and could add a veteran presence at 34 years old and a sure set of hands next to Logan Thomas take some pressure off of him.
You took my pick of Darren Fells, but not sure if I want him as tight end 2. Tight end 3, I can definitely get behind. Hopefully they draft someone, whether that be Pat Freiermuth or Tommy Tremble, Brevin Jordan, Kenny Yua. We'll get into that when draft really starts to pick up. But Fells, there was interest by the team in 2020 before he re-signed with Houston. I think he is a somewhat loose fit for what they're looking for a vertical threat and decent blocker behind Thomas. I think if they were to sign him maybe post-draft, I agree. I don't think we're going to see any more signings until the draft dies down. But if they were to sign him post-draft as someone to compete for a tight end 3 with, let's say, Thaddeus Moss or Marcus Baugh or someone who is a wide receiver converge to the position, I think that'd be a nice under-the-radar move they could make.
Yeah, definitely see him as more of a tight end 3, but if we have to go into 2021 with him, he probably would just be the second one on the roster if they were to get nobody else.
So this other free agent fit, I think we both share similar sentiments about it, is bringing back Ryan Kerrigan. Bit of a cheat here in terms of remaining free agents, but there is still somewhat mutual interest, I know, with the team wanting to bring him back post-draft. The main reason he left was both pay and looking for a starting opportunity, which I think if those were to exist for him in his market, he would have already signed somewhere. So he's likely only getting offered situational pass rushing roles at this point. Whether he's going to hold out until an opportunity comes, I don't really know how intent he is on that, but I know if situational pass rushing is the only opportunity he has, chances are he'll be back here.
Yeah, I heard that he had gone to Cincinnati to have a talk, but it seems from what I heard that they had dwindled down in the contract talk department for that. So I'd have to agree with you in saying that he's only getting offered situational pass rushing opportunities. Love to have him back. If he can come back on the right price, that would be awesome. I think we hold the advantage of the sentiment of being the team that drafted him and has paid him over the years. He's a sack leader here. Like you said, I don't think we'll see it till after the draft, but I definitely think that the chances of him returning have gone up in the last couple weeks. If I had to put a hypothesis on it,
it sounds crazy to say that the team needs a defensive end, but the backup is James Smith-Williams.
yeah,
Nothing against James Smith-Williams. Would like him to possibly grow as a situational pass rusher, but as your third guy, no thank you.
yeah, definitely gonna need to bring some people in. I had definitely had us taking a defensive end in my latest mock draft, so under the radar need for the team for sure.
Speaking of under the radar needs, running back 2.
Boom.
I've gotten some flack for saying the team needs a running back. I've done a couple mock drafts having guys like Trey Sermon or Jamar Jefferson, I think, going to the team. I think Antonio Gibson is probably going to have a great year next year. But when he got injured, the running game pretty much evaporated. And I mean, J.D. McKissick, you want to keep to receiving. Peyton Barber, not very good. So Gibson has like a year and a half of experience at the position. So I definitely am hoping the team drafts somebody at running back 2. But for you got anybody for free agency under the radar running backs that could bring in?
One of my guys, I think he might be a little expensive, but due to the market and how little running backs get paid, I'd really like to see a guy like James Conner. They could get somebody that's shifty, but also has a lot of power behind his running. I think he'd be a great compliment to have with Antonio Gibson. Obviously, a good chance that he could go back to Pittsburgh, but he's still out there on the market, surrounded by a ton of other good free agents. There's a really good chance that we could see him taking a lesser deal somewhere, and I'd love to see him in Washington.
That's an interesting pick. I mean, would definitely be an addition to the running back room. I wonder what that contract would look like, considering, you mentioned it, not much of a market for running backs right now, and the draft is on the horizon. But I don't know. I mean, Pittsburgh offense was not really ideal last year, so I don't know if that was, and their running game was awful last year. Awful running game. So I don't know if that's more so an indictment of Connor and the other guys in that room, or Pittsburgh's offensive scheme, or run blocking, or just one whole mess. But that would be interesting. I mean, obviously everything depends on price, but that'd definitely be interesting.
Yeah, like we wouldn't need him to be the guy or anything, and at the right price, I think he'd be a good compliment. Plus, I've always liked his attitude. He came back from cancer just like Ron Rivera. He's a fighter, definitely somebody that would fit the mold of the team. How about you? Do you have any suggestions for running back?
Some guy in my DMs mentioned this possibility to me about 2 months ago, and it's always kind of been in the back of my mind, but I wonder what Le'Veon Bell would look like with the offense. I mean, I think he didn't really do much in Kansas City this past year. Obviously, didn't really do anything with the Jets at all. But Price, similar to Connor, all depends on Price. But I wonder because he definitely is a dual threat, and I wonder if the team would want to maybe take a low risk flyer on him, maybe a 1 year, 3.5 mil type of deal, get him behind Gibson. Help him work with Gibson on vision a bit. Yeah, just bold, not a bold prediction, but bold possibility I'd toss out there.
It's funny that you mentioned Le'Veon Bell because there was many times that I sat and watched the Washington football team last year and found myself being reminded of Le'Veon Bell when I watched Antonio Gibson, just in his patience and the way that he cuts. And I think that actually, the more I think about it, would be a pretty good fit. He could teach Antonio Gibson a lot. I think they have very, very similar styles of play. And yeah, I mean, if the price is right and his attitude is right, because that's big too. 'Cause he hasn't known to be the best locker room guy. Yeah, two Pittsburgh guys. Let's see what they can do.
I think I'd compare Bell to more so Gibson's ceiling. Like Gibson's ceiling would be what Bell did in Pittsburgh, but Gibson's still very, very raw when it comes to learning the position. It's more so he's gotten his success so far on athleticism rather than like refined traits, I think. But so hopefully he grows in that department. But yeah, Bell would be interesting.
Yeah, definitely not saying he's Le'Veon Bell. I've just seen some flashes in his athleticism. He definitely has a ways to go. All right, guys, that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and be sure to follow us on all social platforms and like and subscribe to the podcast. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else podcasts are streaming. And sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter as well. That's at the BNG Review. That's at the letter N, G Review on Instagram and Twitter. I'm Sam. Follow me at Washington Football 365, and that's Jess. Follow him at httr.nation, both on Instagram. We'll talk to you next time.